mindful of everyone's time and go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Tammy Sander. I work for the Hamilton County Health Department, doing communications and public relations work for them. And I'm joined tonight by a pair of experts from not only the Hamilton County Health Department, but from Trinity Free Clinic in Carmel. And we're going to be talking about Children's Dental Health Month. This is part of a longer series of monthly health webinars that we've been doing. They are all geared towards children's health, and they will involve an array of different topics from vaping and poison prevention to CPR specifically for children, to teen dating violence. So at the end of this seminar, we'll bring up a screen. You can see what else we have on tap for the coming months. But we thank you again for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing our panelists for the evening. Kaylin Underhill is a health educator at the Hamilton County Health Department. She graduated from Ball State University with a major in health education and promotion. She is also a CPR instructor, a Catch My Breath trainer, and is certified as a Six Sigma Yellow Belt. Also joining us is Cindy Love from Trinity Free Clinic. She's a certified pediatric nurse practitioner with over 30 years of experience. She provides parent education at IU Health as a facilitator for Mother Connection and Toddler Time support groups. She's also a founder and current deputy director of Trinity Free Clinic, which provides free health, dental, vision, and integrated behavioral health care. Just last year alone, they provided care for more than 14,000 visitors. So, and these are primarily folks who were uninsured, underinsured, or low income. So a fabulous resource in the Carmel community. If you're not yet aware of them, you should check them out. This is our agenda for the tonight. We are again talking about children's dental health. We're going to start with infancy and then work our way through up and into the teen years. We'll start with our youngest tykes first with tips for surviving those teething years, when to see a dentist for the first time, and how to keep those new teeth as healthy as possible until the adult teeth or permanent teeth come in. And then we'll move on to what causes tooth decay, how to prevent it, namely through sealants and fluoride treatments. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the dangers of sports drinks, dental injuries, and vaping on young teeth. We'll also be taking your questions. There is a comment section. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to type those into the comment section. We'll keep an eye on those, perhaps answer them as we're going along, or we'll hold them if it's something that may not be relevant at the exact moment that you type it, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Cindy, I'm going to toss it over to you first. You're going to get us started with a look at our youngest kiddos.
Okay, there are few things that are cuter than that first little grin with those little tiny teeth poking up on our babies. Those teeth are tiny, they're cute, and they are extremely important. Most children will have their first tooth show up around that 6-month mark. I've certainly seen children who have cut teeth much younger, and I've seen some almost 1-year-olds with a gummy grin yet with no teeth, but that is still all within the range of normal. We have the first teeth that usually show up are those 2 little bottom lower front teeth. By the age of 3, all those little baby teeth, or primary teeth as we call them, should be in, and that's about 20 teeth. And those teeth are extremely important for nutrition. That child is able to chew well with those teeth, and also for speech development. And they're a placeholder for those permanent teeth yet to come. So if we keep those first baby teeth or primary teeth healthy, we're more likely to have healthy permanent teeth. And at age 6 is when those permanent teeth start to show up. And usually it is those permanent molars, those 6-year molars that come in first. And then at about that same time, children are starting to lose those primary teeth or baby teeth, and those big permanent teeth are coming in. So when our children teeth, there are some symptoms that are very obvious to us a lot of times. There are some children who will cut teeth, and we may never know it until they lay their head on our shoulder and take a chunk out of our shoulder, or we feel that child's tooth as we take a spoon and feed them their solid foods. But the majority of children have some symptoms, such as tenderness on those gums, a lot of drooling, and they will get a lot of times what we call a teething rash, which is a rash from all that drool around their mouth and down their neck. Some gums that look red, there's some gum swelling. Children want things in their mouth. They become very oral. They're sucking on fingers. They are using pacifiers more often. They're chewing on teethers, and they might be biting on other things. Sometimes they have sleep problems because they're uncomfortable. Biting, like I said, not biting like a toddler out of anger, but just because it feels good on those gums. And they might refuse some food. Now, things we don't see with teething are high temps, vomiting and diarrhea, and ear infections. Those are things that sometimes we attribute to teething, but those are illnesses. So what do we do when our children are uncomfortable due to those new little teeth? One tool that we have is gum massage. Wash your hands really well, stick that finger in their mouth and rub along that gum line, and most children really like that. Solid teething rings, and when I mean solid, I mean teething rings that are not filled with liquid. Those that have liquid in them, those children can bite through them and ingest that liquid, which may not be good for them. So as this picture shows, that's a wooden teething ring, or you can use hard plastic or hard silicone teething rings. I like to use food a lot of times for teethers. Children that sit up well in a high chair and are on solid foods can use something like a frozen bagel to chew on, or a frozen banana, or a frozen whole grain waffle. Those are great for them to chew on, soothe those gums, and are also healthy options for them. Teething biscuits that you can buy over the counter often break off in big chunks and can be a choking hazard. So you're better to kind of stick with those types of foods and always have somebody sitting with them as they're using those. And then acetaminophen or Tylenol or ibuprofen, which is Advil or Motrin, are good tools to use sparingly. And when your child is really uncomfortable, that's a great tool for you. But the pain from teething usually is gone by the time that tooth breaks the gum line. So we don't want to use those for weeks on end. And you can only use ibuprofen if your child is 6 months of age or older. Things to avoid. Teething tablets. They are marketed online. They are in health food stores. They are not controlled by the FDA. And historically, there's been some teething tablets that have had some ingredients in them that are harmful to children. And there's really no scientific base for those. Amber beads. We see some children with necklaces and bracelets that have kind of brownish gold beads on them. They are a naturopathic treatment that people feel that is a good pain controller for teething. Again, no science behind that, and they're a choking hazard. And then lastly, teething gels, anything that will numb the child's gums. And you can buy those over the counter. They have ingredients that are not healthy for children, and they can actually take the gag reflex and eliminate it on a child. So we do not want that to happen. So avoiding those three things is really important, and staying with those traditional treatments. So along with those baby teeth and cutting teeth, we see pacifier usage and thumb sucking. And that's a big worry for a lot of parents. First of all, I'm a pacifier proponent. It makes happy babies. Babies under the age of 1 need to suck. That is how they calm themselves. That's how they help themselves go to sleep. And especially babies that tend to be fussier, they need that increased suck time. And we know also through research that it may help prevent SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome. It's actually recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics that we encourage pacifier use in our infants. And if a child stops using that pacifier before those permanent teeth really start coming in, then there really isn't too much of a worry about their bite. Pacifiers, thumb sucking, finger sucking, any kind of sucking causes pressure on the roof of the mouth, which causes that barrel mouth effect to happen and those front teeth to kind of start sticking out. But as long as we stop that early enough, that will self-correct. So by 1 year, children need to pacifiers in their mouth all day long. And what can happen is they are talking around the pacifier and also increasing their sucking. So by that 18-month mark, we really want to start taking those pacifiers and leaving them in the bed. So pop them out of the mouth, say goodbye to the pacifier, and throw it in the crib or put it in the top drawer of your changing table, and they don't get it back until they go to sleep. And then naturally, as we decrease the amount of time they're using them, many children between 2 and 4 will give them up. And If they haven't, we are going to start encouraging that around that 3-year mark. And what do we need to do that? It's mainly support for our children. There's all kinds of cute things out there that you can do. You can mail the pacifier to a newborn. You can have the pacifier fairy come and trade it out for a present. You can put it in a Build-A-Bear. But I'm telling you, all those cute things doesn't change the fact that they need about 3 or 4 nights to get used to learning how to go to sleep without that pacifier. I know our son, who loved his pacifier, would have ripped the leg off of a Build-A-Bear if he knew that pacifier was in there. So it doesn't really matter how we do it. We have to take it away and give them 3 or 4 nights of us supporting them through that. So thumb sucking causes the same problem. It causes that pressure on the roof of the mouth. Thumb suckers are great babies usually. My number 3 child was a thumb sucker. She soothed herself, she slept well, that thumb was always there, which is good, but also bad down the road because it's a little bit harder to get rid of than our pacifier. Same rules apply. By 1, that need to suck starts to decrease. By age 4, many children have stopped sucking their thumb on their own, mainly through peer pressure. And if we stop sucking in that 3 to 4-year-old range, really any permanent change to that palate is going to be prevented. So how do we eliminate thumb sucking? We can't throw that thumb away. So we have to start another process. What we don't want to do is use it as a discipline piece. We don't want to yell at our child, shame them, paint bad tasting liquid on that thumb, put mittens on them. Those methods don't work well. What we do want to do is tell them what to do besides suck their thumb. So we are going to start gently redirecting. If we know that they suck their thumb when they're watching TV, or when they have their lovey with them, like their blanket or their stuffed animal, or if they're tired or bored, then we start redirecting them. We turn off the TV. We take the lovey away, and they only get that at nighttime. We say, come on over here. Let's sit down and do a puzzle together. So we redirect. We gently remind. Take your thumb out of your mouth. We want pretty healthy teeth. And then also check with your dentist if we're having a hard time eliminating that habit. There are things the dentist can do to prevent that sucking from happening with a little appliance, and we will stop that. Tooth decay in children, we want to stop it from moment 1. It's one of the most common, it is the most common chronic disease in children. And most people don't realize that. It's a chronic infection in a child's mouth. It affects about half of the US children by age 9, and it wears that tooth enamel off and causes a nice little hole in that tooth, which is the decay. In infants and toddlers and preschool children, we call that early childhood caries, or ECC, which causes a very unhealthy mouth. Look at this. It's awful looking, right? It takes 3 things to make a cavity or decay. We need, number 1, bacteria, and it's a particular bacteria called Streptococcus mutans. We all have it in our mouth. Children are not born with it. They develop it, they get colonized. One way to stop some of that colonization or slow it down is not do things like clean a pacifier off in our own mouth and then pop it in our children's mouth, or feed off the same spoon. But we know children are going to develop this bacteria in their mouth. Some families have a genetic tendency to carry more of it, which is why we see sometimes some families, just everybody having trouble with dental caries. So we have bacteria, number 1. Second, we need food for that bacteria, and that would be things like milk, juice, sticky food that gets stuck on teeth. I'm going to tell you, first of all, rule number 1, no juice before a year of age. And that is a recommendation by the American Academy of Pediatrics. Juice has no nutritional value. It's high sugar, coats the teeth, and it actually increases risk of childhood obesity. And then the third thing that we need is time. So if that bacteria is there and the food is there, but we brush it off quickly, then we're really going to prevent tooth decay. But if we have exceeding amount of time with that on the teeth, the decay begins. So what do we do to prevent the dental caries or cavities in children? There are several things that we can do. Bottles. Children that take bottles or go to bed with bottles at nap time or bedtime have an increased risk of what's called milk bottle caries, where that milk kind of pools on the side of their cheek and it just eats away at those teeth. And then children that use bottles past 12 months of age. So my mantra when I see children is happy birthday to you, goodbye bottles, if they are on a bottle. And we go immediately to a cup, and then never give juice in a bottle. And remember, no juice before age 1. If we are nursing parents, there is less of an issue with this, but bottles really can be an issue for milk bottle carries. When we move to sippy cups, and children start sippy cups at around 6 months of age when they start solid foods. We start usually with a hard spotted cup, and we want to take the valve out because we don't want them to tip their head back and just suck on the cup. And then quickly we will move to a straw cup. And the reason for that is that when you use a straw cup, the fluid is introduced to the mouth behind the teeth. So if they're drinking milk out of that cup, the milk goes in behind the teeth and there's less coating of the teeth, causing an issue. And then there's also a twofer. When we use a straw cup, it develops the correct muscles of the tongue and the muscles around the mouth for speech development. Children that carry a sippy cup of milk around with them all day long have coating of the teeth all day of milk. So we're better to use a cup of water if they are carrying a sippy cup or straw cup with them. And then lastly is a proper bedtime routine. The 3 B's, brush, book, bed. And this is great for prevention of tooth decay, but also for healthy sleep habits. So as our infants get a little older and they have teeth, we want to brush those teeth, and then we want to read a book to the child so we get that early literacy formation, and then we put them to bed without eating because then they remove the connection of sleep from eating and they're able to put themselves to sleep without using that bottle. Next is visiting the dentist, and many parents wait too long for that first dental visit. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry says that we need to have that first dental visit by the age of 1 or shortly after that first tooth. And then we are to see the dentist every 6 months. The reason for that is the early decay in teeth isn't this big gaping black hole. It is a little change in color in the coloring of the teeth. Little white specks on the teeth is early decay for children. And so we want to catch any of that early decay, and we want to make sure those teeth are erupting well and that we are teaching parents how to properly brush. So those every 6 months is very important. Oral hygiene. What is that? That's the practice of keeping your mouth nice and clean and disease-free. So proper brushing. So brushing, flossing, visiting your dentist every 6 months, dental x-rays to take a look at between those teeth, the exams, and then proper cleaning at the dentist is extremely important. And oral hygiene is just strictly preventative care, and not just for our mouth, but for our body. It prevents cavities, gum disease, bad breath, nobody wants that, right? And other issues. Remember, cavities is an infection. It's a chronic infection of the mouth. So without good oral hygiene, we actually increase our risk because of that chronic inflammation of chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, stroke. Those actually are connected to poor oral hygiene. Signs of poor oral hygiene can be chronically bleeding gums, tooth decay, obviously, chronic bad breath, teeth that are loose, not primary teeth or baby teeth, but adult teeth that become loose. Gum recession, where the gum is starting to pull away from the gum, or the teeth. Gum recession, where the gum is pulling away from the teeth and food is getting down into those little crevices. Chronic mouth sores, obviously toothaches, and then swelling of the jaw are signs of poor dental hygiene. Questions often are, is fluoride toothpaste important? Absolutely. And this is going to be maybe different than what your parents heard. We used to say no fluoridated toothpaste until age 2. That recommendation has changed. It is important to start using fluoridated toothpaste as soon as that first baby tooth is cut. Early on, infants, the first toothpaste is water. We wipe those gums down with a washcloth or a piece of gauze. But as soon as that first tooth emerges, we use fluoride toothpaste. And those pictures are an example of how much. It doesn't look like the commercials, right, where there's a big ribbon of toothpaste. The first picture is a rice grained amount, and that is for from age 0 to age 3. That's all they need to cover those teeth when we are brushing them. The second picture is a pea-sized amount, and that is for 3+ children age 3 and older. And that is all they need for proper oral hygiene. We don't need to worry about rinsing. Most children can't spit well until about 2.5 or 3, but it doesn't really matter because if we leave that small amount of fluoridated toothpaste on their teeth, it actually is almost like a little fluoride treatment that they get. And so it's very important that we don't worry about that and we don't worry if they swallow it. It's not enough to do have any problems at all. There are toothpaste marketed for children. Make sure you are looking for that ADA, American Dental Association stamp. That means that if it's a child's toothpaste and it has that stamp, it has fluoride in it. There are still toothpastes out there. Many of them are the all-natural toothpaste that have no fluoride for children. The advantage of using one marketed for children is that it is a milder taste. Most kids are not going to like that strong mint taste that we have in the adult toothpaste. So that is the difference. The same amount of fluoride as the adult, but the taste is going to be more palatable for a child. And then your dentist can often make you recommendations also. We also want to use, number one, a toothbrush that fits a child's mouth. So it's got to be small. And then also that it is soft bristled unless your dentist recommends otherwise. The medium and hard bristled brushes can actually damage gums and cause gum recession if you're really an aggressive brusher. And it can also damage the enamel, especially on young teeth. So how do we get our kids to brush? That's the big question, right? We got to make it fun, just like we do a lot of things in kids' life. And we have to build it into their routine and make it non-negotiable. I don't care if you're chasing them around the house at that toddler at the very beginning to get those teeth brushed, it is a non-negotiable because we know that helps keep them healthy. So choose a toothbrush they're excited about. If you've walked down the aisles in Target or Walmart, there are all kinds of choices. Maybe they want a frozen toothbrush. Maybe they want Paw Patrol. Maybe they want one that lights up or plays a song. So get them involved in picking out which one is the coolest toothbrush in the world for them. Sing a song, set a timer. There are short videos on your phone that they can actually watch. I'm not a big screen time proponent for children, but this is a time that's excellent time to use it to help your child watch and hold still for you to brush those teeth. I like to have children start to brush their teeth and then us check it and complete it. So in actuality, children do not have the fine motor control to brush their own teeth until about age 8. Many of us are letting them brush their teeth on their own way too early. And even after age 8, we need to spot check and make sure that they have done a good job and brushed them long enough. Best way to do it, stand behind your child, let them face the mirror, put one hand on their chin, and then brush with the other hand, brushing all sides of the tooth. 2 minutes is ideal for a full mouth of teeth, for 20 teeth. If you can't do 2 minutes, any little bit is helpful. If they are fighting you, sit on the floor, put their head back in your lap. When they sit back and lay their head back, they usually open their mouth. If they're screaming, so be it. You see the teeth well, brush fast and sing the song, give them a high five afterwards. And again, it's not a discipline thing, it's building it into routine. As far as flossing goes, we don't floss until the teeth touch, and that usually is around age 4, and your dentist will give you guidance on how to floss a child's teeth. So remember, practice makes perfect. The more often we do it with our children, the more it's part of the routine, morning and evening being most important, the more that they get positive reinforcement of it and it's fun, the more often, the more likely they're going to continue that habit and have good oral care. Another great preventative is fluoride varnish. Growing up, you may remember the little duckbill things that we filled with fluoride that you put on your mouth, on your teeth, and had to keep it on for a bit, and then you couldn't eat for 30 minutes afterwards. Fluoride varnish is similar. It is actually painted on by a child's dentist. It can be done in a pediatrician's office. It's usually done a couple times a year unless that child is really prone to cavities, and then we can do it 4 times a year. It's painted on to each tooth individually, and as soon as it hits saliva, it kind of hardens. and they can't lick it off, and they can eat and drink immediately after it's on. And we leave it on for several hours, and then it'll brush off. It will feel funny if you've ever had it. It'll feel funny on the teeth until it's brushed off. And for parents, sometimes the coloration on the teeth looks a little bit different after we've put it on, but that all will come off with that first brushing. And then they'll give you the instructions. It's usually a few hours, or sometimes they'll say don't brush them till the next morning. It's painless, and it only takes a few minutes. It's beneficial for prevention, and actually early decay, it can actually help remineralize that tooth. Sealants, clear resin that is painted on the biting surfaces of permanent teeth, on permanent molars. So that 6-year molar is the first one. And you can see the little crevices in that first tooth. And then the sealant is applied, and then it kind of smooths out those crevices. Most cavities in children are in the biting surfaces of teeth, where that food gets stuck and we can't brush it out well. And the only time that we really see them on the flat surfaces of teeth are with milk bottle caries. So this can prevent up to 80% of cavities in those molars. It's strong, it lasts for years, and it's painless and easy to apply. So a great preventative for our kids.
All right. Thanks, Cindy. Kaylin, let's fast forward a few years now to our older kiddos. Many of them play sports. Let's talk about some of the things parents should keep in mind for their mouths.
Yes, of course. So, like she said, we're going to kind of transition over to the kids that are a little older. Maybe they're starting to play sports for the first time. Whenever we were going through this PowerPoint together, I always thought back to myself and the mouth guards specifically were the biggest thing that my parents were always making me wear whenever I was playing basketball. So, mouth guards are huge. These are the main protections for any kind of injuries, any kind of emergencies that may happen for our children. There's a lot of different benefits, but we also did find like the 3 main ones, basically just having that cushion with our teeth, especially those top teeth. That's where we often see a lot of the cushioning happening to kind of protect that from happening. And then along with if any kids go through the process where teeth do fall out, in the future slides, we'll kind of slowly go over what that kind of looks like and what to do in that case. And then also, not only just our teeth, but also protecting our tongues, our entire face, and our jaws specifically as well. So looking at mouth guards specifically, there are about 3 main types out there on the market. So I kind of wanted to break these down so each of you can see kind of what the different ones look like and kind of how they fit. So on the far left-hand side, you can see we have the custom fitted. So these ones are, you can see in the picture right there, you can see the kind of indents of the actual teeth. So a lot of the times students or your children will go to the dentist. This is where they have those customized ones for them. It's specific to their teeth, the way that they're fitted and formed together. Oftentimes we do know that these may be a little more expensive just because they are custom compared to the other versions, but also these are definitely the best fit out there if you are thinking about getting the right one that may be the most comfortable for them. Then you can see the second one. So we have the stock ones. These are the ones that you can go to Dick's Sporting Goods. You can go to any sports place and get these ones. These ones are unfortunately the ones that I grew up wearing. You can see definitely the difference between the pictures. You don't have those crevices of the actual teeth. So they are obviously a little more inexpensive because you can go to the store and they're not custom to your teeth. But they don't really fit well just because you can see the difference of how they don't have those crevices. They kind of just a one size fit all. You can buy them by age groups. So just depending on how old your child is, that's where we're kind of looking at making sure that you get the right size and the right fit for them as best as possible if you're going to go through this stage of using the stock mark ones. And then they also can be very bulky. Myself, I went through the process where I wasn't able to barely breathe. It also can be very difficult to even talk just because it is kind of very chunky in your mouth. Can be very uncomfortable, but still a main option that we often see a lot of parents buy for their children. And then we have the third one, which is the Boil and Bite. So this is kind of like the do-it-yourself version. So sometimes this can be a better fit, kind of depending on if you're able to get it correctly formed into the mouth while biting down on it. But it's basically this softened material that you use boiling in water, and then after it cools off for a bit, you insert it into your child's mouth. It'll form to the shape kind of similar to the custom fitted one. But like I said, this is kind of more like an at-home one. So you can definitely see kind of similar to the first picture, those crevices of the teeth, a little more intact than the second one. While we're looking at these mouth guards, we really want to emphasize how important this is. We know that studies have shown that athletes, especially children, they are 60 times more likely to suffer harm to their teeth, their jaw, tongue, whatever it is, kind of injury wise, if they are not wearing a mouth guard. That is a huge statistics that we just want to make sure that we are aware of how big of a difference it makes. So looking at this, I will give this one over to Sydney. So she's going to talk a little bit about what it looks like when our teeth are knocked out. Let me give it over to her real quick.
So parents' worst nightmare, right? Your child has an injury to the mouth and they're missing a tooth. So what do we do about that? First of all, take a look, make sure it's a permanent tooth. See if it's a baby tooth or a permanent tooth. If it's a baby tooth, we call the dentist. We still need that child to be seen, but we're not quite as worried about it. If it is a permanent tooth, you find the tooth, you want to pick it up by the crown. The crown means the part that you see that's not the roots. Pick it up and hold it only by the crown. We want to rinse it with a little water or milk just to get the dirt off of it. We don't want to soak it. Just rinse it a little bit to get the dirt off of it. Do not wipe it. Do not dry it. Do not drop it in a cup of water. We want to keep it moist, but water is not the solution to keep it moist with. If you can, and I'm not sure, I've never had to do this. And as a parent, I think it would be very hard. Best case is to reinsert that tooth back into the little place in the mouth where it came out of. A lot of times there's a lot of damage there, the swelling, and we don't want to force it in. So if you can't put it into the socket where it came out of, next best scenario is to drop it into a cup of milk, totally covered up. Milk, full cup of milk, drop the tooth in it and go straight to the emergency room. Some first aid kits will have a tooth cup in it that has proper liquid for saving a tooth. You can also use that if you have a first aid kit that has that in it. Both times, if we can get to the ER and we can get a dentist there, that tooth can be saved. They'll brace it in and it can be saved if it's within the first hour or so after it happens.
Awesome, thank you. And then going kind of into sports drinks, we talked a little bit about mouth guards, but now we know how popular these sports drinks really are. They've become so popular over the last couple of years, especially. But a lot of parents aren't really aware of how damaging they can be to our children's teeth. Looking at these compared to sodas, Cokes, all those other different things, they're kind of very similar in a sense of how high in sugar they are, even though they do provide those electrolytes, especially during sports. Always a great idea to have them drink that. But if they are in a situation where they want to drink sports drinks, it's always best just to rinse out. But we also do know that these sports drinks can also weaken our tooth enamel too. So they can be just as dangerous as any other pop or soda that we are very familiar with too. And now we're going to go into vaping to kind of get to the last section. So as we have been kind of talking about all these different topics, now we're kind of going into like the middle school, high school timeline where we look at this. So as a health educator, I go into a lot of the schools with these children. I hear a lot of different opinions on kind of what they know about these vaping devices, unfortunately, to the point where at middle school is where we're really seeing a huge growth right here. So we wanted to include some actual pictures. So the top left picture, the Mr. Fogg on there, you can see in the middle picture, those are actual pictures that we have confiscated from Noblesville High School. You'll see in the next slide in just 1 second, kind of how many more we've also been able to get a hold of. But looking at middle school students specifically, as I said, that we are seeing a huge spike in this age range with vaping. We know that there's about 1 in 22 middle school students that have used some kind of electronic device in the past 30 days, which is a huge statistics, very kind of scary to think about. But when we're talking about these, I I always have these conversations with students, the ones that are open with me. A lot of the things that I hear are, number one, they are cheaper, right? They're easier to obtain than cigarettes. When I talk to like the high schoolers about it, they're even available to purchase online, unfortunately. I remember talking to this one parent who had this random package that showed up on her door, and it was actually her son that was just able to go online and purchase it himself. It's just very easily accessible right now, and there's hundreds and hundreds of flavors, as you can see that top right picture. So it is very much kind of marketed towards our children. So that left side, you can see the juice box right there. And then on the right side, that's actually the e-liquid that they use for vaping devices, things like that. So they look very similar. And of course, when we go back to younger children, like we were talking about towards the beginning of the presentation, if they look at these two different products right here, they're not going to be able to tell the difference between the two, especially if they're not able to read. So we really got to keep that in mind when we're talking about this. And I also wanted to go into some signs of vaping as well. So this top left picture up here, this is the picture that I was kind of mentioning about all the different vapes that have been confiscated. I think this was literally just one semester worth that Noblesville High School that they kind of confiscated from the students. So that's just a short period of time, filled the whole bucket up right there. So you can see how many were taken there. But some definite signs as a parent standpoint to kind of keep in mind. A lot of the times there may be some different changes the way that they may act. So number one, nosebleeds can happen a lot. Since with the vaping devices, it kind of interferes with our whole face, not just our mouths and our tongue. So a lot of times it can create dryness. That's where a lot of the times we see nosebleeds happening. And then also, along with the nicotine and then the other tobacco products, that can cause a huge increased risk for thirst as well, drying out the mouth, kind of similar to your nose as well. So if you think, or if you notice that your child is having an increase of thirst, they're drinking more water, drinking more whatever, that could be kind of a red flag for you to kind of think about as well. And then, like I said, with the one parent who had a random package show up on their doorstep, and it was a vape, unfortunately, from their child that they just went online and was able to order it just like that. So if you do see any suspicious packages that you weren't kind of thinking of knowing that they were supposed to show up, that is also something else to think about. And like we said with the last picture, when we were looking at the different flavors, right? If they are kind of more into different sweet or fruity smells, this can often easily remind them of that vaping device that they're using. So if you kind of see a shift in that, that also can be something else to look for. And then one thing a lot of parents don't really think about when it comes to vaping and kind of the connection, a lot of teens specifically will cut back on caffeine. The reason why they do this is because using different nicotine products, tobacco products, any kind of electronic device like that, on top of consuming a lot of caffeine, that can cause a lot of anxiety, a lot of different symptoms. So a lot of them will actually cut back on caffeine. So if you know that your daughter loves Starbucks, right? And then all of a sudden she just doesn't want to go anymore, that could be a sign that, maybe something else is happening. And then there are a lot of different slang words too. In text messages, we know some three main ones. One is called Addy, sauce, VG, and then just a couple other things is just kind of keeping in mind if you see unfamiliar items like USB drives, battery chargers, they even have some that look like actual pens and markers that are actual vape devices. They're making it harder and harder now for us to kind of realize what is what's actually a pen versus what an actual vaping device is. And then as you can see, the very gross picture in the bottom right there, we had to include the picture. It's hairy tongue. We know that a lot of high schoolers specifically have this. This is basically from overgrowth of bacteria, germs. It's a full layer and it kind of resembles like hair on your tongue. It's just a bunch of different ingredients that kind of are inside the vaping devices, inside that e-liquid that leaves that residue on their tongue. And it can be very, very difficult to get that off the tongue. So as I was talking about like the chemicals, as I just mentioned with these vaping devices, here's kind of a breakdown of a bunch of different things that we know have been found in these devices. So obviously we talked about nicotine, but a lot of different cancer causing chemicals. I believe there was over 50 specific ones that are huge right now, that chemicals are just being found into these vaping devices, which obviously can be very, very scary. When I go into the middle and high school to talk to vaping to them about it, I always mention just thinking about, as you're hitting a vape device, just kind of see it and as a perspective as you're just basically putting a bunch of different heavy metals into your lungs, which obviously nobody wants to do, right? So there's a lot of different things there that we can kind of see are included in that. And then we need to talk about the risk, right? There are so many risks that are associated with vaping, just in general, but these are kind of the main ones that we wanted to talk about that's more so related to our teeth, to our oral health and hygiene. So number one, all these different chemicals can be very, very toxic to our enamel and our soft tissues, especially with the middle schoolers, as we see that are unfortunately starting to vape. They're kind of hanging out with their friends that are doing it at such a young age. Having this happen over time just makes it that more at risk for them to kind of go through these processes and maybe having these risks happen to them. Number two, oftentimes if you hear somebody that vapes often, they will say they have what they call cotton mouth. So this is also another risk that we also see, kind of a symptom behind this too. And then also, like we kind of mentioned earlier, more serious things over a period of time, like gum disease, tooth loss, all of those are also huge, huge risks that we very much want to show how important it is to kind of be aware of what is at risk here.
Thanks, Kaylin. That's great stuff. Let's open this up now for questions. If anybody has any questions for either Kaylin or Cindy, please type them in the comment section. I believe Kaylin's going to monitor that for us. Here are some additional resources that are also good to reference if you'd like more information after this, especially the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. We have the CDC. The Cleveland Clinic is a wonderful resource, and healthychildren.org has great information not only about children's dental health, but many other health issues as well. Kaylin, are you seeing any questions out there right now?
Not any currently, no.
So I have to ask you this. The study suggests 1 in 22 middle school students admit to vaping. You spend a lot of time in the schools. That seems a little low to me. What's your insight on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking the same thing. So I sometimes have I normally when I go into the middle schools, I have some kids that are very open about it. Even though I'm a teacher, I'm a health educator going in there, they feel comfortable talking to me about that. But I definitely know that looking at least with the schools that I've kind of interacted with, it's a lot higher than 1 in 22. Unfortunately, I would say it's a little higher, probably around maybe 20%. Just based off of what I've seen, the conversations I've had, especially with the staff members and the teachers too. So obviously we're going to have those kids that don't want to admit, reporting that they do use them because they're obviously can be afraid of the consequences with that. But yeah, definitely a little higher than 1 in 22 that I would say.
Cindy, I was kind of blown away by what you had to say about caries. All these years later, now I'm feeling guilty. I was guilty of picking a pacifier up off of the ground and sucking it to give it back to my child.
I know. And as I said, eventually all children are going to have that bacteria in their mouth, but certainly we don't want to cause that colonization any earlier than is going to happen anyway, and especially families that have a high propensity for those dental caries. We don't want you to stop kissing on your babies, but probably cleaning that pacifier off with your mouth isn't the best solution.
I've got both your contacts information up here for anybody who would like to follow up with a question to either one of them. Let's talk real quick. I'll give you each a parting comment. Anything that you'd really want people to take away from the evening, um, with regard to either what you presented or what the other one presented. Cindy, you want to start?
I think what I want parents and all of us to understand is that often we think of dental health as a secondary thing with healthcare, but our oral health impacts everything on our body as a whole. And so when we're talking about staying healthy, we think about going for our physicals and eating right and doing all the right things for our body, but we ignore our mouths, and it affects, like we said, hearts. It affects chronic inflammation. It affects speech. It affects nutrition. So it's just affects your overall health. It impacts it so substantially. So we cannot forget about our oral health being as important as just our body's health.
You guys do a lot of great work at Trinity Free Clinic. What are some of the most common things that you see in terms of dental health and children's dental health specifically?
We will see children age 12 and up at Trinity Free Clinic, and we see basically just ignoring the need for that dental care. So we do see early dental pain. We see in adults, we see tooth loss from not having access to that dental care. And then we just provide a lot of education. When our younger people come in, our goal is not to get rid of teeth, not to pull the teeth, but to actually take care of the teeth so we can prevent that long-term health issues with those chronic infections in teeth. If you've ever had a toothache, it's incapacitating. And so we were actually just talking about it today, that if you've got a cold, a lot of times people will, or a minor illness, they're not rushing in the door in the morning. They'll be there for that walk-in clinic, but they're not at the door. If you have a toothache, you are waiting in line first at the door to get in. It is extremely painful for people.
Kaylin, what would you like to leave everyone with? What if there's one takeaway from your presentation, what would it be?
I would probably say just taking time and having those conversations with your children. I think like stressing the importance of that, really emphasizing that everything that we talked about from the very young stage, infants, all the way to high school, there's so many different things, so many conversations that can be talked about. I am a huge advocate for the vaping. So, specifically with that, I know that a lot of parents may think, oh, my child is not one of those children, they're not vaping, but just even having that conversation and slowly building that trust to even bring it up to them just so they can be aware of some of the things that we talked about is huge, I would say.
Any questions?
I am looking at the chat. It does not look like we have any questions.
You guys have just done such an amazing job. Well, as we promised, we're taking a look here real quick at the slate of upcoming webinars we'll be hosting in 2024. March is Poison Prevention Month. So we've got that webinar coming up on March 27th at 6 p.m. We're going to be discussing the best ways to store your medicines, best way to store cleaning products, avoiding lead paint, identifying potentially poisonous plants. There's just all sorts of poisons all over your home, and how do we keep our kiddos out of them? If you're interested in participating in any of these, you can see we've got drug take-back events in April, mental health awareness for children in May, CPR specifically for kiddos, not just babies and toddlers, but young adults, pregnant women. And then you can see we move in again throughout the whole month. We've got all sorts of different topics, and we'll even go further into vaping in November. If you're curious as to about whether or not how to tell whether your team is vaping, we're going to talk about that a little bit further. But if you're interested in participating in any of these future webinars, please go ahead, log on to the Hamilton County Health Department's website, click on Health Education, and then underneath Health Education, there will be a button that says Children's Webinar tab. So again, we just want to really thank you for joining us again tonight. Please feel free again to reach out to Kaylin or Cindy if you have any follow-up questions. And, we appreciate the time you took to look into this particular topic with us. And if you know somebody who wanted to be here tonight, or maybe wasn't here and you'd like to share the presentation with, we will put a link to this presentation on our website and our social media channels tomorrow. So again, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.